Welcome in on this Thursday evening. I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. Welcome to Live Impact Weather tonight. We're talking, guess what, about heat. That is going to be a big topic of our show tonight. So popular last night, we're going to talk about Dew Point again.
Back by popular
yes,
demand.
Team Dew Point was very popular online yesterday, so glad to see many of you are joining the coalition of Team Dew Point there. We're going to talk about corn sweat, which is pretty cool. I'm glad Tim and I are going to talk. I'm from the Midwest, so I'm very familiar with this. If you're not from the Midwest, this is something that'll be really interesting to you. But everybody in the Carolinas, obviously, the talk of the town is the building heat wave. And we're going to start with the current conditions because it's actually, I don't want to say cool. Let's call it not as hot because low 90s, this is kind of normal. I went on a little bit of a rant on my Facebook page today, and because I do get frustrated with people who, when we get this extreme heat, they just say, oh, it's just summer. Well, today is just summer. This is normal heat, all right? Low 90s feels like it's mid 90s to 100. Yeah, that's what you expect in the southeast. It's still above normal, by the way. The average high is 90, so we were 4 degrees above today. But what's heading our way this weekend is honestly the hottest stretch of weather we have seen maybe all time. I mean, we're talking about a 7-day stretch of weather that could be an all-timer with 100-degree heat. And that's the story. It's not the feel-like reading. It's actually going to be 100 for the air temperature. So even before you factor in the dew points, we're going to be feeling like 100. You throw in just a little bit of humidity. You don't need a bunch, and it's going to feel like 105 to 110. That's why 7 days of heat indices above 105 are possible. The other thing about this stays dry. I talked yesterday about this a lot on air, that I was suspicious that we were going to see the drought monitor come out, and sure enough, it updated today like it does every Thursday, if you're ever wondering. The drought monitor came out, and it did expand quite a bit. We saw abnormally dry conditions, and if you've seen your lawn, this is probably not a shock to you. 2 things I've noticed: my lawn is bone dry. My sycamore tree, which I love in my backyard, I planted it after it got a bunch of trees got torn out by the tornado in 2020. Every single leaf is off the tree. Now, most people would freak out, but I know this tree very well. That's its defense mechanism. It'll shed its leaves when there's dry, hot weather, and they will grow back once we get some moisture and some cooler temperatures. But you might notice a lot of plants really looking wilted or just struggling out there. It's because it is dry, but it's also heat stress. Remember, the drought monitor takes in not just rainfall, it takes in soil moisture, stream flows, groundwater, wildfire risk, crop stress, as well as water restrictions and other things. It's a lot of impact driven. It's great for us because that's what we're focused on, weather impacts. It's just not rainfall. You could have above average rainfall and still be in a drought if you get into a stretch where other factors come into play. And you actually could be below average in rainfall and end up not in a drought because there's not many factors. That happens a lot in the wintertime because the plants aren't using moisture that time of year, so don't worry about it. Crazy streak that we're currently in. If you've noticed this, we haven't dropped below 70 degrees for a low in 33 days. Okay?
Ouch.
33 consecutive days. It has not been below 70. That means we haven't seen the 60s since the middle of June. That's the longest streak on record going back to 1870. So we've got some crazy streaks ongoing. We're going to be adding to this. Tonight, obviously not going to drop into the 60s unless you're in the mountains, mid-70s in Charlotte. And tomorrow, this is kind of the beginning. 97, that's definitely going to be hot, but that'll be probably the coolest day we see until next weekend. So as I mentioned, I hate using the word cool sometimes in these setups. I'm just going to say not as hot when it's not as hot as the day before, relatively speaking. Dew points, boy, I was optimistic that it might stay a little bit drier than this. And there's still a thing we call mixing out. In the afternoon, when the heating of the day, the atmosphere can mix up a little bit and drier air from the mid-levels can work down. So sometimes you can see the dew points mix out in the afternoon. But right now, the forecast has most of the dew points pretty consistently in the upper 60s and near 70. Now, if it was 90 degrees out, that wouldn't be too bad. It would be muggy, it would be humid, kind of typical. But when we're going to be near 100, that's going to make the feel-like readings just ridiculous. And you'll see the heat dome building over us. You'll hear that term a lot. By the way, it's not a new term. We've used it in meteorology for a long time. If you've ever chased storms or watched chasers, they used to call it the death ridge sets up. Now, the death ridge has got a couple of meanings, by the way. For chasers, it meant it kind of killed all the chances for storms to chase. But in the plains, the farmers used that term quite a bit because the death ridge meant hot, dry weather, which killed their livestock. So The heat domes and these death ridges actually have a long history of causing droughts and heat waves like we're going to see. The lack of rain is going to be noticeable. 7-day rainfall forecast, when you only see 1/10 of an inch or 1/100th of an inch over 7 days and you're in the middle of a heat wave, remember, the plants are starving for moisture. It's so hot they're using more. Evaporation rates are through the roof. The fact that we're getting no rain at all is going to make this even worse. So the 3-day heat impacts, major tomorrow, which would be bad enough. But then we go into Saturday, we start seeing these purples. The purples are extreme. Normally we see 1 or 2 days of this. We're like, holy cow, that looks pretty bad. There's like 7 days of this. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, serious heat issues. So that the heat impacts every single day starting Saturday through the middle of next week are going to be in that extreme category. So really kind of worried we're going to see potentially some of the hottest weather we've seen in a long time. And there will be records. Record highs are pretty high this time of year, as you expect. So we'll be close to records. Hitting one of these records would not be crazy, but the fact that we could do it 5 days in a row is kind of the oddity of all this. It's the duration of this. And this was something I talked about online today was 100-degree days. If I had to ask an average Charlottean or a North Carolinian or South Carolinian, they would probably tell you it gets to 100 all the time. The problem is it just doesn't. There's areas like Fayetteville, maybe Columbia, areas in the coastal plain where that happens quite a bit. But in the Western Carolinas, it's not, especially in Charlotte, 100 degrees is pretty rare. In fact, in the last 10 years, look on the chart there. We had 5 of them in 2015. We had 1 in 2022, 1 last year, and 1 this year so far. So you do the math. That's only 8 in the last 10 years. And since 2000, which is 25 years, quarter century, 25 times. So that averages out roughly to 1 a year. I looked at data today, which blew my mind even. In that same time frame, 25 years, we had highs in the 70s. Highs in the 70s during the summer months, June, July, and August, 139 times. So that's like 6 times more likely than 100 degrees. That kind of blew my mind even that we saw that frequently highs in the 70s, which makes my point that if it was 79 today, we'd all be saying, wow, that's wild. That's crazy. That's really abnormal. Would you say 79 in the middle of July is abnormal, James?
No, but I welcome it.
I would, right now I'd take it, but that's 11 degrees below average. Now, if we flip that, 11 degrees above average is 101, which is what we're forecasting for the weekend. So both of those are what we call anomalous temperatures or outliers. 79 and 101 are not normal in Charlotte in the summer. And you got to treat both of those kind of equally in some ways. So the forecast for the weekend, the numbers look jumbled together because we're not used to putting triple digits on there. A lot of our graphics were not designed to have 3 digits in there. So 76 and 100 on Saturday, 101 on Sunday. And the thing about dry conditions like this, as the heat wave builds, it can build on itself. There's an old saying that I used to hear all the time that drought begets drought, but heat waves also beget heat waves, which means as the ground dries out, the sun heats the ground up, it causes the ridge to be stronger, and over time you can end up getting hotter and drier. Because if you think about it, when the ground has got water or moisture in it, the sun's energy goes into evaporation. When the ground is dry, the sun's energy goes into heating the air. So this could be a doozy of a heat wave. So that stretch right there, 7 days from Friday to Thursday, the average high there is 100.4 degrees. The average low is 77.6. That would be the hottest 7-day period in Charlotte's 147 illustrious years of record keeping. So this is not one of those, this is not the media hyping one up, guys. This is, the numbers don't lie. This is legitimately maybe the hottest stretch we have seen in our history. So we're going to talk more about heat fatalities, why it is so serious, the dew point, and corn sweat. Yes, corn does sweat. We'll explain coming up in a minute. All right, welcome back, everybody. Tim Buckley joins me from our sister station, content sharing partner. What do we call our stations now, guys? I don't even know.
I think we call them BFFs.
BFFs, yeah. We have to come up with some cool, catchy name for us. But from WFMY up in Greensboro. And I don't know, Tim, have you heard it's going to get hot?
I don't think the audio problem is on me. I think it's on Tim.
Oh, I don't hear you, Tim.
Oh, here we
Oh, there you are.
I'm talking now, and we're going to talk
You were
so much
muting.
about heat. Yes, I got it fixed up.
Yeah, you sound great.
I didn't want to talk about the heat just yet.
I don't either, man, but it's like
Yeah,
one of
we're
those things you got
expecting
to.
that heat in a big way.
Yeah. I don't know. It's
Probably going to get sick of it by the weekend.
yeah, I'm already sick of it, and I haven't even gotten to it yet. I'm curious, I think you run into the same thing I run into. And I'm not going to throw everybody under the bus on this, but there's this general feeling when we get these heat waves, people tend to have this laissez-faire attitude of, it's summer, it's not a big deal. But as we know, this one, at least for us in Charlotte, I don't know about you in Greensboro, Tim, but looking at some of the climate numbers and our records, this could be an all-timer for us, especially for duration and intensity.
It's certainly going to be a longer heat wave than we've seen this year. It's going to be a hotter heat wave than we've seen this year. And, I was watching a couple of your numbers there in the breakdown just a second ago. If you hit 100 that many days in a row, I mean, that is really something special, or in a bad way, too. We're not quite expecting that level of heat up in our neck of the woods. We're usually about 5 degrees cooler on these type of things than you are. But either way, part of the struggle with communication in a heat wave in a hot climate is getting people to take heat seriously, and it's differentiating between that regular hot, like, oh, it's just July, it's just heat, and that type that you really kind of need to adjust your behavior to. And I think this is one of those for everyone in the Carolinas and most of the Southeast too.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tim, that you made there about the kind of regular heat. And I kind of joked today. Today was like a regular heat day for us. Like this was a normal day. And what's heading our way this weekend is kind of the anomaly. But it brought up this interesting stat. And I know you've probably shown this graphic before, but the CDC graphic of heat-related fatalities in the U.S., in the last, it looks like decade or so, we've seen a pretty dramatic increase. Now, we kind of know what's going on here. We're in a warming climate, but there's also some socioeconomic impacts going on here where we have an aging population. We have a more susceptible population living in parts of the country that are more susceptible to heat waves. But it is fascinating to me how people still do not realize that heat is the number one weather killer in the United States. The top three always blows my mind because it's heat, flood, and rip currents right now. And I always say there's a correlation between those three things that people take very lightly, Tim, don't they?
Yeah, and certainly, I think if you ask people on the street what would be the biggest killer, tornadoes would probably be at the top of people's mind, maybe lightning or maybe hurricanes. But like you said, heat is just not something that is easily thought about. Most of us, we live in air conditioning. We work in air conditioning. You might not experience it kind of the way that some others do. But across the country, this is not a given for everybody. I grew up in a place where my home growing up didn't have air conditioning, actually, and this is not that long ago. Most people up in the Great Lakes area still don't. It's not a standard anyway, and there are reasons for that. But around here, we do, and mostly you can limit your exposure, and that's a good thing to do. But don't mow the lawn the same way you usually do. Don't go about in all those things without adjusting by taking more breaks, drinking more water, or picking a different time of day. Maybe 8:30 p.m. is a good time to cut the grass.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Tim. I think that's the other thing I try to reiterate is like, we can deal with this heat. You just got to do things differently. Like you said, like, don't mow the lawn in the middle of the day. If you do have to work outside, and praise all those folks that have to work outside in this, you are amazing people. I think about those poor repairmen that are going to be fixing air conditioning in these hot attics. Oh my gosh, that is one of the that and roofing has got to be one of the worst jobs to have in a heat wave. Those folks,
it's tough. And you think about the people. A lot of times these car shops, the auto shops don't have air conditioning. All these
they just have giant fans going on. Yeah, it's brutal. So I think if you just plan your days differently, you take more frequent breaks, drink more water. It seems like common sense, but sometimes you have to force yourself to do those common sense things. So you brought up this good point about air conditioning. I'm like you. I grew up in the Midwest. We had a window unit only in our I think it was in our kitchen or our living room. And I remember on hot nights like this, we would all like sleep on the floor in the living room because it wouldn't get back to the bedrooms. It was so hot. But you make a good point. A lot of folks didn't have air conditioning for a long time. I think now the penetration is like 96 or 98% of the country. It's pretty crazy. But growing up in the Midwest, there's something else that you brought up that I was familiar with. I know you're familiar with it, but a lot of folks in the South aren't familiar with, and it's corn sweat. So we talked about this going in, and we were like, what the heck is corn sweat? Well, the technical term is evapotranspiration. Say that 3 times. But talk a little bit about this and why folks in the Midwest have some similarities to folks in the South, because they deal with crazy humidity as well, but for a completely different reason.
This is one of those topics that, for whatever reason, it seems like it comes around on social media now. Every couple of years, corn sweat becomes the buzzword for like a week or even a month. And so if you're watching and you've never heard about this, I get it. It's not something we see a lot of here in North Carolina, but it's very, very interesting. What happens, and the basic science of this is that plants, they need to cool themselves off as well. And when we talk about things like the corn belt, for example, where are the areas of the country that are growing the most corn? It's not here. We have some, but it is those places that you stereotypically would think of. It's Big Ten football country. You've got Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois. You ever drive in those areas and you get that flat land and you just see corn as far as the eye can see? There's an incredible corn density. Yep. And so these plants, they do kind of live and breathe, kind of like people. And when they're exhaling water vapor. And this contributes to the surrounding climate and the surrounding air in a way that's a little bit more pronounced when it's already hot outside, because just like us, they need to cool down too. And this is something that it is not something I knew a lot about. So I was just researching this a little bit over the last couple of days. But believe it or not, an acre of corn can release about 3,000 to 4,000 gallons of water per day.
Yeah.
So it's adding all that to the atmosphere. It's adding all of that to your air that you're breathing in these Midwest climates. And shockingly, it can raise the dew point maybe an extra 5 degrees, maybe even 10 degrees higher than it would be otherwise. Just depends on every situation. But we talk about 70 degrees as being a crazy high dew point, normally. And it's normal around here, but that's an uncomfortable dew point. Up there in Iowa, sometimes you can get 80-degree dew points, and they're not on the Gulf. They're not in the Florida Keys. They're in Iowa, and they're sweating this thing out. This is have you ever experienced this? Because I don't know if I have necessarily.
Yeah. So I grew up in Ohio. We have a lot of sweet corn, but nothing like Indiana or Illinois. Like I've done that drive from Columbus, Ohio to Des Moines, Iowa on 70. Oh my gosh, you feel like you're not moving because there's just corn everywhere. And when this time of year, the corn's really tall, and it just takes over everything. And those giant leaves, like the leaves are gigantic, and they just produce so much moisture. Corn is also a very water-intensive crop, meaning it takes a lot of water to grow corn, and because of that, a lot of it gets expelled. But and my family's from Chicago, so they're familiar with this in the Chicago area because Northern Illinois gets this. Whereas you mentioned, Tim, I'm looking at the dew points right now in central Illinois. Near St. Louis to Champaign, it's like 78, 79 degree dew points. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And it does affect the local climate there, as you mentioned, and actually does promote higher Cape values and sometimes can produce storms. So it's a really fascinating phenomenon. And if you hear anybody from Minnesota or Iowa or Chicago, they'll complain about humidity. And if you're from the South, you think, oh, no, you know what you're talking about. Trust me, there are points, especially late summer before the harvest, that they know exactly what we're talking about in the South. They just deal with it in a very smaller window. And it definitely happens about this time of year until about August. That's typically when we see it. But crazy to see that be a big issue. And you're right, it always becomes a talker about this time every year.
It's always interesting, and I think back to maybe when I was a kid and I was getting interested in weather. We only heard about weather through a couple-minute segments on the news every now and then.
Yeah.
Now there are all these talking points all the time on social media.
That's a good point.
And more weather phenomenon that are smaller get more widespread acclaim, and sometimes they catch on like fire. And corn sweat is interesting, it's weird sounding, and it's a real impact. And so you mentioned, I was just going to ask you as a follow-up, the peak it would be right about now through August is kind of the peak of this impact for them?
Yeah, typically when we would harvest the corn in Ohio, because I mean it's one of my favorite things. The only thing I miss about the Midwest, honestly, is probably the sweet corn, because it's unbelievable. I brought it back to a bunch of cookouts down here, and people are like, "Where does this corn from?" Because it's so huge, and it's just when I say sweet corn, you eat this stuff, it is like pure sugar. It is like unbelievable. That's where corn syrup comes from, by the way. It is so rich in sugars. But about mid-August, right before we go back to school, there would always be these big carnivals and festivals, and that was the big thing, was to go get fresh sweet corn that was just harvested. They'd grill it on the grill. They'd have a coffee can with melted butter in it, and you dip the whole thing in there, and you just walk around with ears of corn eating at the fair. It was just, I loved it. It was delicious. So when I think corn sweat, I think two things. I'm sweating for sweet corn myself because I want it, but also the evapotranspiration. So,
Tim, I just want to check. Did he ever bring you any of this corn? Because he never brought any of this corn to me.
That's going to be my next thing. I'm going to bring down, because and the crazy thing, it's so cheap, Tim. Like all these little farmer markets on the corners of streets, it's like 24 ears of corn for like $2. You go to like the local Harris Teeter or something here, and that costs you like $10. So it is amazing. But yeah, corn was a big part of my life growing up, because I lived in I don't want to say I lived in the country, but I lived kind of the edge of the country, the urban country interface, we'll call it. And that's what a lot of my friends do. In fact, one of my high school buddies owns Soleil's sweet corn farm in Summit County, Ohio, and he took up the family farm and grows it up there. So it definitely brings back a lot of great memories. And it is, this time of year, it is nuts. We used to have a saying, I think it was knee high by the 4th of July, was what the corn was supposed to be.
Yes, that's right.
And then it was tasseled out about this time, and then you harvest it like mid-August. So yeah, so it's interesting topic that we got into, and I know a lot of folks here are kind of interested, and especially people that are in agriculture. I think they understand it. You're right. In North Carolina, I think we do grow a lot of corn, but it's feed corn mostly, not the kind that humans eat around here.
Well, this segment was brought to you by the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. If you'd like to travel there,
yes,
you now have a reason.
Fill up your tank with ethanol for us. We'll be very happy for you. I'm telling you, well, it's if that's the most exciting thing you do in Ohio, you're really living it up. Because that and telling my kids I did cow tipping as a kid, that was the other thing. They were shocked I did that in high school when I was a dumb high school kid. If you don't know what cow tipping is, we'll have another show on that at some other point. But that's something we did in high school as well. So Tim, last thing, we're going to round out the show here. We got a couple minutes here. We wanted to talk a little bit about this lightning strike, and I don't know if James, if we can show this or not. Can we?
Give me a little bit while longer to clear it.
Okay.
But I will tell you that we're in talks for an interview.
Oh, so I'm going to save it then. I'm not going to talk.
Okay.
So, long story short, I think it was maybe on Wednesday, we talked about the crazy lightning strikes you guys have had up in your area, and it was a big part of, the month of June and July. Well, I'm going to kind of tease this because hopefully we'll get this guy. There's a gamer in North Carolina. He's in Holly Springs, right, James? Is that correct? Holly Springs area, so outside of Raleigh. And we were talking about lightning safety. We had a whole show on that. He was gaming, live streaming on Twitch, and he got hit by lightning in his house. How did it happen? Well, remember, anything plugged in, his headphones, his computer, he was on there, it came in through his computer and zapped him in his live stream. So hopefully we're going to try to get him to talk about it. But I thought it was an interesting story because it kind of proved the point that we made about, like, hey, you can get hit inside your house if you're touching things that are connected outside, right, Tim?
It's true. And a lot of times, we don't always think about that. We don't always remember that part of it. But you talk about a cautionary tale. You're just playing a video game or something. I mean, that kind of, it's shocking, right? It's not something that you would expect. And he's okay, right? Is that right?
Yeah, he's fine. Actually, the stream didn't die. It sounded like his headphones might have got fried. But he actually on the stream said, hey, I just got hit by lightning. And he's okay. But it's this happened on the 19th, right, James? So not too long ago.
Yes, it did happen on Saturday, July 19th, and
Okay.
there were storms in the area, some of which I think were severe. Lily and I were looking back
Yeah.
at the radar archives.
Yeah, so that will be really interesting. So, as always in our show, we like to get questions. So if you want to text us, 704-329-3600. You heard Lily briefly chime in there. Lily, we got some great questions yesterday we didn't get to. Actually, I read some of them after the show, and they were pretty hilarious. Any great questions for Tim and I today? There were some good ones for you, Tim, yesterday. I wish we had read on the show.
Actually, we haven't gotten
Oh.
anything
Oh, really?
just yet today. I
All right,
know.
though, Tim, I got to ask you this because it's personal and also a question we got yesterday. The Wyndham's coming up your way. Somebody actually
Yes.
texted us a question about the Wyndham forecast. What is the story with
Okay.
that golf tournament, with this heat coming in?
Well, it's going to be hot. I mean, we know that, right? So the play gets started on Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
So Thursday will be round one, and then you go through next weekend. However, to me, it looks like if you're trying to find an end of the road with the heat wave,
Yeah.
it's probably going to fall late next week, closer to Saturday. So
Yeah.
if you were planning to drive up to Greensboro, go to the Wyndham, rounds 3, rounds 4, they might be a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
The first part of the week is going to be brutal. They got a
Yeah.
lot of those other little events there. If you've never been to it, it's a really fun little golf tournament,
Yeah.
too. They've got a beach there you can check out on one of the lakes. They got Margaritaville set up, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
it will be hot. And one of the things is they almost always have hot weather, of course, is the middle of summer around here.
Yeah.
But last couple of years, they've been really unlucky with rainfall. Last year, it happened during Tropical Storm Debbie. We had about a
that's
3 to
right.
4 inch rain day
Yeah.
during one of those rounds, and so they had to adjust everything. Hopefully, we can avoid that. It does look like we will have some storms popping up by about next Thursday, Friday time frame. So they'll have to dodge those. But
Yeah, the reason I asked
maybe
is
the weekend. The weekend
Vanessa Rufus,
comfort.
my co-anchor, she's actually going to go up this next weekend. She's all excited to go up there. And as you mentioned, it's a great tournament. I've driven by that course so many times, and Wyndham does a great
Yeah.
job up there. And golf in the Carolinas is always great, so I'm always up for any kind of golf tournaments we have around there. So hopefully, yeah, the storms won't be a big issue. But as you said, I remember the last couple of years. I forgot it was Debbie last year, but I do always remember at some point one of the rounds is always
Yeah.
like getting clobbered with rainfall up there. So that was one of the questions yesterday
It's
we
a
had
nice
for you.
old historic course.
Yeah, it's great there, and so
And it should be in good shape, too, because they had flooding there over the
Yeah.
last couple of weeks,
Oh.
but they're in good shape and they're ready to go. So everything
Yeah.
is A-OK.
Yeah, so tell folks again, like that aren't from the area, where is that at? Actually, it's right off the interstate, right?
Sedgefield Country Club in Greensboro. It's right between Greensboro and High Point. It's a great spot to go.
Yeah,
Come up
All
and
right.
see us.
Yeah, come up and see Tim. You're up there. You can watch us. Maybe you could go live from the tournament one day. That would be great. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll talk more about the heat, obviously, over the coming days, but stay tuned to more Impact News coming up.